I remember being scared and trying to grab people's feet and people just swimming past me, ignoring me. And I just calmed down, just kind of gave into it. And I just remember thinking, so this is how I die. And I was kneeling down on the floor and I was going through boxes and boxes of books. And what I found was not one, not two, but more than 10 books about how to write a book, how to get paid to write, how to be a writer. She was an engineer. I never even knew she wanted to write a book. And that really just planted this seed of that there's more that I'm supposed to be doing. There's more that I'm supposed to be
Mm.
sharing with the world than just living this, comfortable life.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today we have Irene Gabelnick with us. She has had an NDE when she was a child, so we're going to talk about that. But I first wanted to say thank you so much, Irene, for being on the show with me today.
Hi, Joe. Thank you so much. I'm looking really forward to it.
Your experience happened when you were around, I don't know, I think it was 9, I believe, what I
Yes.
read. Okay, so it was 9 years old. And if you could just give me kind of an overview a little bit about what your life was like during that time, whether it was in any type of religion or any kind of traditional things you did, anything that would have maybe influenced anything, just kind of trying to get an idea of who you were at that age.
Well, I was living at home, obviously with my parents, which are both from Ukraine. And we were not, definitely not well off by any means. And so my friends and I would often walk 3 miles to the nearest swimming pool. Well, my parents would give me bus money, but we would prefer to save our money for chips and pop after we would go swimming or ice cream, right? And we would walk. We walked everywhere, or we rode our bikes. But we used to walk to this local school where they had a pool, and you could just had lifeguards, and we would go swimming. And that's where it happened, was at the pool. But my mom was sick a lot on and off throughout growing up, but I had a pretty normal childhood. Grew up on the east side of Buffalo, big Ukrainian Polish community there. And I guess, yeah, I just hang out with my friends in the summer. We would, do like Chinese jump rope, go swimming, stuff like that, hang out in the schoolyard and play basketball or whatever. So that was pretty much my life. It was summer, so we were off school. And I don't know if you want me to delve right into what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, so you were living pretty much a standard childhood, just being a kid. But did you go to church or anything? Was there any religious or spiritual influence from your parents at all? I'm just curious.
Yes. So, and like I said, because my mom was sick, we didn't go every Sunday, but I do remember going to church a lot. And I've always been very spiritual personally. And I've always felt very close to God and never like I had that I have to be in a church or even in a church community. My mother was Ukrainian Orthodox and my father was baptized Catholic. So I remember going to the Orthodox churches when I was younger, but primarily we went to a Ukrainian Catholic church that was a little bit closer to the house. And that's where all of my family's funerals have been. And, it's still there and still very, very beautiful, beautiful church. So yeah, we did go to church. And it's kind of funny because maybe I'm jumping into this a little bit too quickly, but my mother must have been sick because I didn't get baptized when I was a baby. I think they were fighting about it, although my siblings were all baptized and they were baptized in the Catholic Church. And after I had the experience, my parents were like adamant about me getting baptized. And I was actually baptized when I was 12 because I was turning into an adult. They were like, "Oh my gosh, like we never did this." And I was like, "Why? It doesn't matter." Like, and it was so important to them. And
Mm.
so I was an adult. I have pictures. It's sort of weird. I got a
Wow.
godmother. And so I guess that's kind of a little part of the story too.
That's interesting. So you were baptized if you were 12, that would be after the NDE. So I'm curious to, that's interesting. Just that that happened after you had this experience as a child. Even though when you're a child, I know a lot of times you don't think about these things even when they happen. and we'll dig into that a little bit. But so you had Ukrainian parents, and as I let you know as well, I'm half Ukrainian, and I do know a lot of Ukrainians. They do have a tradition of going to church every Sunday. There's a lot of tradition there that, especially if they come from Ukraine, because it was a little bit. I feel like religion's a little more. I shouldn't speak for them now because I don't know what it's like over there now, but a lot of them that came over, they were very much wanting to go right to church. Like they wanted to have that church culture that they were used to back home. So that's why I
I
was
think,
curious if you were doing that. Yeah.
I think now they're just dodging,
Right.
it's unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's sad what's going on.
sure.
I was curious to see. So
Praying.
I'm sorry.
Sure, there's a lot of praying going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hopefully we can all hope that it gets better over there. You said that you were going often to a swimming pool with your friends. Is that like was that
Yes.
a normal every kind of weekend kind of thing you were doing?
We were off for the summer, so I had no
Okay.
school. So
Right.
whenever on the really hot days, we would go swimming.
And that
So
and that led up to what happened. So if you want to, yeah, if you want to explain what exactly happened.
okay, so like I said, we were not very wealthy. We didn't even have a car like my dad did, I guess, before I was born. But so there really wasn't anywhere else to swim. It wasn't that close. And I did have swim classes in junior high, but our elementary school did not have a pool. So I never learned how to swim. I mean,
Mhm.
eventually in my 20s, but anyway, that's all kind of part of it. So I did not know how to swim. And there was a girl, her name's Sherry. I'm not going to say her last name, no hard feelings. Sherry did not have any ill will. And Sherry's very, very tall and thin. And I told her she couldn't understand why I wouldn't go in the deep end of the pool. I only stayed close to the edge. I didn't even go in the middle of the pool where it was 5 foot. I was still short. I was little. And I couldn't, it was above my head, even in the middle of the shallow end of the pool. And Sherry said, she said, "What do you mean you don't know how to swim?" She goes, "My dad just threw us in the lake and said, okay, learn how to swim," right?
Right,
That's what they
right,
did. Well, nobody ever did that to me. And I didn't want that done to me. So Sherry said, so she, a little while later, she comes over and she goes, "Hey, Irene," she goes, why don't I carry you like through the pool? And I said, "What? No, I'm not. Why would we do that?" And she said, "It'll be fun. Come on, it'll be fun." And I said, "You can't walk across the pool with your head above water." She said, "Yes, I can." She was really tall. So she proved it to me and she walked across the pool and showed me that she was above water and she would be carrying me and I would be safe. I don't know why I agreed to do this with her.
mm,
So we're doing it in the middle of the pool, kids swimming everywhere. She says, "Oh my gosh, I got a cramp. I got a cramp. You have to go down." I was like, "What?" She basically dropped me in the middle of the water, which was above my head, and I didn't know how to swim. And so I just started, and there were all these feet going by me, and I just started grabbing people's feet, trying to I didn't know how to swim.
right.
And then I was panicking, obviously. And then I just started taking in water and I just felt this peace come over me. And I can't say that I saw like a light, but I kind of like I did sort of see this lightness. And I just calmed down, just kind of gave into it. And I just remember thinking, so this is how I die. And it was a very peaceful feeling. And then all of a sudden, then I see a hand reach down, who was Sherry, grabbed me out of the water. She carried me to the edge. Then I'm coughing and all the hot lifeguards are like run over. And I just remember being so embarrassed that all the cute lifeguards were like all like doting over me and I couldn't swim. And I just remember being horribly embarrassed and just coughing up water. And I was fine.
Wow. So, okay. So your friend is trying to whether
Teach how to swim.
teach you how to swim, and she thought this was the best way. Maybe she thought, oh, I'm still
Yeah.
there and I can just
She wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed.
right, right, right. It was that
She
okay.
had a big heart, and I know she didn't mean to do it. Like her face, like I just remember her tear, like she felt horrible about
Hmm.
it.
Yeah,
She
and
never
that's
asked, but I knew what happened.
Right.
I know exactly. She didn't have a cramp in her foot.
Right. Right. And usually a cramp in your foot wouldn't make you just fall into the water. I mean, she should have been under
Yeah,
there too then at that
exactly.
point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so this is okay. So it sounds like you had definitely the beginning stages of a near-death experience. So you're taking in the water and you're feeling, were you scared at first when you were taking it in the
Yes.
water? Not to try to go back to that moment, but
It's funny, like I just don't remember that part of it. And I've heard that dying from drowning is very painful, and I don't remember feeling any pain. I remember being scared and trying to grab people's feet and people just swimming past me, ignoring me. And then I just remember feeling like at peace. It was I don't know how to describe it. And that's really all I remember
you
about it.
can physically though remember taking in the water into your lungs.
I don't remember feeling it. I remember releasing. And I do remember coughing up a lot of water at the
Hmm.
edge of the pool. But I
Right.
don't remember feeling pain or discomfort. I just kind of remember how I felt.
So from the physiological place, from the body's sensations and those types of things, it sounds like when they got you out of the water, they got you before it went into any type of severe distress. Because sometimes, and I don't mean to be graphic, but a lot of times when people are drowning, there's a lot of things happening to the body. Because
It
there's,
was quick. She was obviously watching
mhm.
and pulled me out right
So they
away.
got you out before that started to take hold of you, but from a spiritual place, you had come to the idea that this is how you die and that you're at peace with it. And you're
Yeah,
only 9 years old.
yeah.
And I say it like that because not a lot of 9-year-olds are walking around thinking about that, right? They're thinking about where can I get my root beer or my bag of chips, like you said. Like it's like
Right.
you're not I mean, you may have been a little more. I was a sensitive kid, so I was always aware of things. I was more aware of people and I'd be upset if people were mean. And so I was a little more sensitive to the world, but I definitely didn't start really thinking about my uh the end of the existence of Joe until probably my teenage years when I really started. That's when things started to kind of come online that way. And I find most people are that way. But correct me if I'm wrong. Were you thinking about death or anything like that?
I don't know. I mean, I mean, I'm trying to think if there was anyone I knew that died young. I remember my parents going to funerals. I don't really, I mean, the first person I lost was my mom that I was really close to, and that was when I was 20, but she almost died when I was 17. But up until then, I can't really remember any like, experiencing death or people dying. Um, and I forgot to mention that my dad's name is actually Joseph
Oh,
too. So,
wow. Well,
and
that's
today
interesting.
was his birthday. So that's kind of cool.
So
Anyway,
that is interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
it is. It is. And I remember, like I said, when I saw the date, I picked it. I was like, ooh, that's dad's birthday and Sabo's birthday. I told him it was my cat's birthday too.
Right.
Very special day today. And my dad's
Yeah.
name, Joe. Yeah, Joseph. So, sorry, we got a little off
That's
track. So
okay. Yeah. So
I
yeah, I was just
don't,
trying to see if there was
yeah.
influence around this. You got this deep understanding that you were okay with dying in this pool at some
Mhm.
point. Like just the fact that you're mentioning it means that at some point, you as a 9-year-old child, you weren't fearing, oh my gosh, I want to live, save me. You were at some point being
Yeah,
okay with the end. And that's fascinating to me because
yeah.
of how many people walk around fearing their own existence or the
Yeah,
end of their existence, right?
and I'm not afraid of dying. I mean, I'm not. I've gone skydiving. I've gone whitewater rafting,
Mhm.
on class 5 rapids, which is very scary for me because I did almost drown, and I
Mhm.
did it anyway. I even took surf lessons in Hawaii, and I was terrified, but I did it, and I don't let fear stop me. I didn't learn how to swim until I was in my 20s. I started taking swim lessons. I just
Mm.
paid for them and learned how to swim. But with my kids, I had them in mommy and me swim classes at 6 months. The
Mm.
second they were old enough, we started going to swim, and I had them in swim classes every year. And they're good swimmers. And I was
Cool.
so important to me to make sure that my kids know how to swim.
Well, that's good. And see, because that's a reflection of what you went through. And I was also going to say, part of your fearless life that you've been living could have some kind of reflection from what happened to you at 9 years old. And I only say that because of how many people I've talked to and how when they have a child at NDE, it does seem to take away a fear that they don't sometimes they understand why, depending on their experience. Sometimes it's very in depth and they've lost all fear of death. And then other people, it's short, like yours, they have this experience, but there's still um this absence of fear that some people develop. I don't, I've always said, I don't think everyone wants to go out and have an NDE. That's because it's not the best way to get through that fear. But I'm just curious if you think it has anything to do with that.
I do. I really do. But what I don't understand though is why I'm still terrified of being in deep water. So even though I can swim,
Mhm.
and even though I'm right next to the edge, if I'm in the deep end of a pool and I'm treading water, I have to be able to touch the edge, or I get this overwhelming fear and this feeling that I'm not safe or something like that, which makes no sense to me.
Well, some spiritualists would likely, it's like I have the same, I don't have the same thing with water, but I have a thing with flying. And a lot of people would say there's a possibility there's some kind of cell memory there. Maybe in a past life you drowned and it was maybe not a good drowning, or it could be so many things, but that's why there's these like past life regressions and hypnosis to try to bring us through to see these things. I should probably do that with the flying thing. Because it's funny. People will talk about, oh, I don't want to go on that boat or that. And I'm like, why? Like I have zero fear of that, yet I don't want to go in the sky. So, and then other people are like, well, I can I don't want to go on a boat, but I can go in the sky. And I'm like, so it's interesting. There's something I think that we might carry with us from life to life. I mean, I didn't know what I thought about you know, multiple lives before or reincarnation, but the amount of people I've spoke with that have brought back information about that, it's definitely influencing my thought process around it. And now, see, when people bring up things like what you're mentioning, like my grandmother, for instance, was petrified of water. She wouldn't go near it. And no one really understood why. It was just a thing she had her whole life. She never overcame it.
It's
And
happened in my life, in this life. I don't know about past lives. I mean, it
yeah,
was the life that I almost drowned, and I still feel that fear. What you're talking about reminds me of this premonition story. Have you ever heard the story about the Titanic cat?
no, I have not. No.
There was a mother cat that had kittens on the Titanic. And before the ship sailed, I believe it was the day that the ship was sailing, that morning, that mother cat carried every kitten off of the ship before it left. And some of the people that fed them and knew the cat, she was like the Titanic cat. They,
Wow.
they observed this. And I don't know where I heard that folklore story, but that mother cat had to save her babies. She just kind of knew something was going
Like
to
an
happen.
instinct just kicked in.
Yeah,
Right. I've
yeah.
also been told animals are the oldest soul, like these old souls, they've kind of been through enough and they come for a brief little visit. Like it's almost like a quick visit. They don't live too long and they come to help humankind. It's like, and
Ooh,
I don't disagree with that. It's like I said in one of my episodes, I said, you think of any animals, like none of them are mean. Yeah, yes, there are the ones that are out there eating each other in the wild because they have to survive. But if you look at an animal that is not in that position, they're generally loving creatures unless they have terrible owners. And that for the
right.
most part, they're all beautiful in essence. So I guess you could say that about humans too, but I think we carry a little more baggage with us and tend to react different than animals. So but yeah, I wanted to ask you one more question about the experience because in its I don't want to overlook it. You said that you took in the water and you it came this peace came over you like, okay, this is how I die. But you said you thought you saw like light. In what way do you believe this light look? Like, what did the light look like that you were feeling?
I didn't like see a light beam. It just appeared light. I just felt, I don't know, it just felt bright and peaceful and joyous. It just,
Like a calming light.
and then
Was
I like a calming light, and then I saw the hand, which was Sherry's hand,
hmm
and like through the light, I saw this, hand, and then
hmm
I realized, oh, someone's saving me. And she picked me up and carried me. That's how I knew it was her, but I don't know.
Did the light feel warm?
It did. Of course, it was also a hot summer day.
But was there
Yeah,
like a warmth feeling to it? I'm not trying to influence your thinking. I'm just trying to
a long time
shake the,
ago, but it
yeah,
definitely didn't feel cold.
right.
So,
And then the last thing about the light, have you witnessed that form of light since then?
hmm, I don't think so. Not the same. Similar.
Mhm.
I mean, there are definitely times where the sun shines in the window and I'm in the light where I just feel like, oh, that's so nice, but not in the same way.
So you don't believe
Close.
this light was because you know how you go underwater, you look up, you see the sun beaming in. It wasn't the exact same as that. This felt a little bit different than that.
Felt a little bit different. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did after you were saved, luckily, um, of course, your 9-year-old self, feels embarrassed, like you said, you preteen type. Oh God, these guys are saving my life. I feel, you immediately come back online as a human and feel embarrassed as a young girl that is now being saved because you can't swim. So I can understand how that happened. Did did that experience? Did you think about the experience at all, or were you kind of just moving on with your day after that?
I don't really remember much about the rest of the day other than I would not go back in the water,
Mm.
you know. Yeah, I would not go back in the pool. I don't know if I ever went back. I must have gone back at some point. I don't
Yeah,
remember. It was a long time ago.
right.
I don't really remember. I don't even think I told my parents about it.
When then, because again, and of course, yeah, I try to think back to my childhood. I can barely remember half of stuff. I
Right?
think maybe from 3 to 4 onward, I have moments, and then there's just
Yeah.
moments, and this definitely stuck with you at some point. I'm curious, when do you think, if you were to take a guess, and this is a hard question, but because you weren't thinking about it right away, you don't even remember the rest of that day. When do you believe you started to recall that incident as something more than just I almost died?
Hmm. Honestly, I don't think I ever really thought about it until I met you and heard about your podcast.
Okay.
I never really thought about, I mean, I feel a little bit like I'm glad it happened because I taught my kids how to swim at a very early age.
hmm
And there's that part of it. Um, I still wish I wasn't afraid of the water. And I was thinking this morning, like I want to start swimming again because when I swim, I feel stronger and I feel more confident. Don't get me wrong. If one of my children or someone I cared about or any child, probably even any person, if I saw someone drowning, I wouldn't even hesitate. I would jump in to save them.
Right.
Um, but I still want to be, I still want to feel, and it's just like anything. If you're not doing something, if you're not writing, if you're not, practicing your skills on a continuous basis, you're not going to be, you don't feel as strong or confident in doing it. And so I really think I want to start swimming again on a regular
Well,
basis.
yeah, it sounds like some sort of fear that needs to keep being readdressed. It's, like I said, with
Yeah,
the flying thing, or even heights for me in general are something I need to
right.
keep working on. I think what fascinates me the most about stories like yourself is, especially in childhood NDEs, this isn't all the time, but a lot of the times, children or even young adults will have this near-death experience and they won't tell anybody and they'll keep it to themselves and they'll just go on with their life. And in fact, they don't. Sometimes people realize later on it did influence them spiritually, and sometimes they say, "No, I just don't even think about it." And that fascinates me, and I'll tell you why. Because even if you're the type of person that believes that you were in this situation and maybe your body was just reacting to, you took in the water and all these things. I would believe that any human being would, if they were in a danger situation where they're about to die, would not be overcome with peace
Hmm.
if it was coming from a pure physiological explanation. Because don't we want to fight for our life? Like, that is like the first instinct from a humanistic standpoint. And what I've always tried to think about is there's some kind of threshold. It goes from I'm going to fight to okay, I'm
Yeah.
all right. And I've had other NDEers tell me about these drowning experiences, and some of them are quite horrific and graphic, and I won't get into it, but up until the point of that switch, it's oh my God, I gotta save my life. It's a panic, panic, panic. And then they go, oh, I'm okay. I'll be okay. I'm fine. This is peaceful. This is how I'm gonna die. Oh, there's the light. And then they go into this experience, and I'm like, where did that switch happen? I don't believe unless we're wired somehow to do that. I mean, I obviously have a different belief system now and things like that, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Might depend on where you're going. I mean, if you don't know if you've seen the movie Ghost, but where the little,
Right.
people come up from the ground, right?
Right.
I mean, I feel pretty confident that if there's an afterlife, I know which way I'm going,
Right.
to the good place. But um, yeah, I never really thought about it. And I find it really interesting that I'm not the only one who experienced that. I never really thought about it as far as from a drowning aspect. I mean, I've heard stories. I've always been very interested and intrigued by other um your NDE, you call it the near-death
Hmm.
experience stories. And there are a couple of books that I really want to write that I've been thinking about forever. And one has to do with because I was a volunteer for it's called Connect Life. It used to be called Units, which is our the Western New York organ, eye, and tissue donation site. And I don't know why I've always loved hearing stories about life saving and from organ donors and the interesting perspectives of how they interacted afterward, like how someone who the family of an organ donor met, the recipient in a very unusual, coincidental,
Right.
situation. And the same with near-death experiences. So a friend of mine almost drowned when he was a kid, and he was ice fishing and fell through, and someone saved his life. And years later, they reunited in the hospital where they were like sharing a hospital room with somebody that they knew. Like, so I
Wow.
find that interesting. Like, that
Hmm.
how we kind of reconnect later in life after an experience like that.
And yours is that explanation is even more intriguing because I was going to mention there are a lot of people who've had organ donors give an organ, and those, or it could be even just another kidney, and all of a sudden that person, I'm just saying this from a general place, but they'll start having dreams of things they never dreamt before or thoughts they never thought before, and then when they meet their organ donor, they find out, oh, I'm dreaming your life or experiences you had. And that's not the brain, that's some other cell memory that's going on. And maybe there's,
Oh,
that's really fascinating to me too. I've read this, seen people talk about it. It doesn't happen all the time, but the fact that it even does happen is incredible. So,
yeah, almost
yeah.
like twins too, how they and my sister and I we were 18 months apart, and I always say we were only 18 months apart. She was my best friend, and unfortunately we lost her to cancer. But when we were little, the two of us would have the same reoccurring dream.
Hmm.
And one day we started talking about it. We're like finishing each other's sentences. Well, we were having the same reoccurring dream, and we
Hmm.
hadn't shared it with each other. And we were both like, wow, that's crazy. Like we were,
Hmm.
Anyway,
And
so
that's really interesting because what are you connecting to? Right? Where's
yeah,
that middle connection, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone recently who really wasn't a believer of much, and again, I'm open to all different types of people and have conversations. It's what really keeps us it keeps me intrigued in life. And so, and he was just kind of saying, I don't, I just believe in this and this is it and that's it. And I said, okay, he's like, if I can't see it, it's not real. And I said, okay, I can understand that thought process, but I said, if you wanted to, make some food tonight, you wanted a recipe for the food you wanted to make for dinner. He goes, okay. He's kind of confused where I'm going with it. Said, what would you do? He's like, oh, I don't know. I'd look up a recipe. I'm like, where would you look it up? On my phone. Okay. So you'd look it up on your phone. Okay. So where is the information coming from that you're getting that recipe from? He's like, on my phone. I said, no, but how are you connecting to the recipe? Through I don't know, my data, my internet? I'm like, right. And how do you get to that? He goes, well, through my phone. I said, yeah, but how you're not connected. A phone is just this.
Mhm.
There's no wire connecting to the
Right,
information. You can't see the information. It's coming
right,
to your phone. You
right.
can't see it.
Yeah,
And he's kind of like, oh, like he
yeah,
kind of that kind of made him think for a moment. Like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, that's invisible. So right. So if that exists, then what else exists? We're not questioning enough things. And it's great. I mean, we're here to live. And I get that. We have to, it's good to be grounded and live our lives, but it's also good to kind of question things sometimes because I don't think we are.
Yeah. And I was listening to another interview of your podcast. She was talking about manifestation. And she's like, I tell my students, be careful what you manifest. And I can't tell you like how many times I've thought, oh gosh, I'm gonna spill that, and then you spill it, right?
Right, right, right,
It's like you almost like caused it with your mind,
right, right.
and they say, and I'm a huge fan of, The Secret and The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, and you become what you think about. And it's true. And every single thing on this earth that humans have created has come from a thought,
Hmm.
including electricity. I have no idea how it works, but boy, I love when I turn that light switch on. I'm so grateful for it. And Einstein was a huge uh, practicer of gratitude and, thoughts and manifesting. And so I'm really into all of that stuff. I think it's super, super cool. And I always feel like I learn something new every single day, too.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder. So you were okay. So you're interested in the power of manifestation and the power of our thoughts and bringing things in. And you had this experience when you were a child. Were you just in life? So if you look at your life now, like the whole this life you've lived up to this point, if a moment like that didn't switch on the spiritual, your mindset, were you just kind of like going through life like most people do, get a good job, have kids, have a house, like get married? Is that kind of where your mind was your whole life?
Most of my life until my sister died.
Hmm.
And there was a huge shift. I was a successful realtor, beautiful, comfortable, lovely two-story colonial home in the suburbs, 4 oceanfront vacations a year, a new car, just working, putting the kids through school, just, single mom, just going with the flow. And then I lost my sister when she was only 46. So I was
Wow.
45. And we were very, very close. And it took me 2 years to muster up the courage to finally go through some of her things.
Hmm.
And I do remember that year when before she died, when she was diagnosed with cancer, I wrote a bucket list and I climbed my first mountain that summer. I just started doing things. And one of the things I've always wanted to do is to write a book. And I it wasn't until a couple years later, her husband kept saying, Irene, can come on over whenever you want. You can take anything. And he'd given me things throughout the years, jewelry of hers and stuff like that. She had this like office/sewing room, and we're both huge book geeks, always swapping books. She'd write her name in cursive inside her books so that you know whose they were to get them returned because we're always swapping books. And I was kneeling down on the floor and I was going through boxes and boxes of books. And what I found was not one, not two, but more than 10 books about how to write a book, how to get paid to write, how to be a writer. She was an engineer. I never even knew she wanted to write a book. And that really just planted the seed of that there's more that I'm supposed to be doing. There's more that I'm supposed to be
Mm.
sharing with the world than just living this, comfortable life, you know? And that was when I took my first writing course. I became a direct response copywriter, finally wrote my first book, started going on podcasts. And yeah, it was a really a life-changing experience. And I'm definitely more, I'm still feeling kind of like I'm in search of, I believe that everyone has been put here for a reason. And I still kind of feel like I'm searching for my purpose. But I've I've come to a point where I've realized that it really doesn't matter, you know, that
Mhm.
it'll either come to me or it won't. Um, Maybe it was just to have my beautiful children. Maybe they're going to do something amazing in this world. I don't know, but
Mhm.
I'm not gone yet, so who knows?
Possibly the way I like from an outsider that's never met you till today, I can tell you my thoughts on it. And it's just that you have this, life that you were doing well and you had all these things and that's great. And that's a comfort that's good. People want comfort, they want the good things in life. But then you lost your sister, which was, pretty traumatic for you. And it seems, you know, someone again who's very spiritual will say, your sister maybe knew you wanted to write. It might have been something you've always wanted to do. And those books were placed there for you to say, to give you the encouragement to do it. And you did it. And then even though you're saying to yourself now, you know, okay, I did that, but I'm still searching. Well, it's kind of like the sense of I look back at jobs I did before I run a music school now. I do this podcast, I do a bunch of different things, but I've had jobs in the past that I absolutely hated, or I just did it and I didn't know why I was doing it. But it taught me how to work with people. It taught
Mm,
me. So each thing you're doing. So if you look at your life, now you can write books, right? And now what are you supposed to do with that?
you're
So
right.
it's a
Help
number.
other people write books.
Right. It just exactly like it
Yeah.
just keeps kind of going in this direction of you're learning these things. I feel like a lot of times we're coasting through life and the moments that we think are kind of either pointless or we just did it to try something, it's way bigger than that. And there's always that blueprint purpose to each thing we're doing.
Mhm.
I don't think we're meant to sit and think about it all day long because I think we drive ourselves crazy. I think we're just supposed to go with the flow, feel
Right.
through life. But I do believe also at times it's good to step back, especially because we can also go the other side of it, where you can get into a really dark place.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then you're just continuously getting these downward spins and we don't know what's going on. Well, it's because maybe it's what we're focusing on. So let's take a step back, look at it like a bigger picture and say, oh, okay, I can actually go the other direction and go that way. So, those are the reasons why I love Soul Inspired. It's just hearing inspiring stories. It sounds like it's interesting hearing yours. Yours is very interesting because it wasn't a huge influence on you immediately in your life. But here you are now at, whatever
Yeah.
age you are now, talking about this experience that happened at 9 years old. And it definitely something triggered you to want to talk about it. And you had these other moments. So I get fascinated by that because there is definitely an influence there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was very, very excited to meet you and be a guest on your podcast. And I found it. I wasn't looking for myself. I was looking for interviews for my clients. And I don't know if you were able to connect with Emmanuel, but who's the healer. And you said because you're into music, you're interested in meeting with him too. But and then when I like checked out your podcast and learned what it was about, I was like, oh my gosh, like I had a near death experience. I never even thought about talking about that or sharing it with the world like this.
Mhm.
But something just intrigued me. And I just wanted to, yeah, I just kind of wanted to connect and have this cool conversation, you
Well,
know?
your experience could be as simple as the fact that someone out there could have had someone that was close to them that passed, that drowned, And now you're giving the perspective of you were okay. At one
Yeah.
point, you were okay. And the real
Yeah.
question is, why were you okay? Because you probably intuitively knew it was coming. You just hadn't got there yet. Someone said, nope, you're not going anywhere, pulled you out, brought you back here. But
Yes.
there's that, yeah,
Yeah. I
that,
didn't think about that. So that could help kind of with the healing process of knowing that they didn't suffer the entire time. And
absolutely.
they got to a point where, you know what, they were okay, you know?
Mhm.
And that's why I like talking about the organ donation stories, because when I found out that my sister, because I was a volunteer and I was at our annual Christmas party. They threw all the volunteers a wonderful little brunch and with gifts and prizes, and they always made it fun and games. And I just so happened, I don't know if I don't really believe in coincidences, but she had died 6 months earlier. And I was sitting next to the person who could find out exactly if someone got her organs.
Mm.
And she said, well, on Monday morning, I could call you if you want to know. And I said, I really do. And they never contacted me because her next of kin was Paul, so they wouldn't have contacted me with like any information. And he never wanted to find out. And she called me on Monday and she told me that the only viable organs she had were her corneas because the cancer had taken over, her whole body. And one of her corneas went to a 44-year-old man in Tennessee, and the other one went to an 80-year-old woman right here in Western New York. And I just started crying. And I thought, at least her death wasn't for nothing. And it helped two other people to see.
Mhm.
And I found comfort in that. And it was a big part of my healing process. And so that's why I think those stories are so important to share.
Well, absolutely. That's a huge impact too, right? And she impacted two other families. So
Exactly.
it's incredible. That's incredible. And did she know that she had that ability to do that before she had passed? Is she or
You
did
know
she?
what's bizarre? And I don't know why I remember this. Like, there are certain things we forget and certain things that we remember. I remember when we had both like gotten our licenses. And so we were in our, I don't know, our teens, early 20s, and we were talking about whether we were an organ donor. And of course, I got my license, I think, when I was 18, and right away I signed up to be an organ donor. But we had the conversation, and maybe because my mom had just passed or something, and so we wanted to have the conversation so we would know as each other's next of kin, what our wishes were. And I remember her saying to me specifically, I mean, I remember the restaurant where we were sitting, having dinner, having this conversation. And she said to me, the only thing I don't know if what I'm comfortable with is having someone else see through my eyes.
Mhm.
I don't know why I remember that. And the only viable organs were her eyes. And she had made the decision at some point to, not exclude that item. Because you
Wow.
could you could say, but I'm anything but this.
Hmm.
And I don't know what she had done. If for a while she had said nothing but this, but I remember having that conversation, which is just kind
That is
of
fascinating.
right,
And
isn't
I
it?
can kind of also see why she felt that way because life is very personal to everyone. So having someone have the ability to use your eyes after you're gone feels off because this has
Oh.
been your life and now that's a personal thing. And she must have at some point said that was okay. What's interesting even further than that is the kind of, I mean, if you go back, anybody that's listening in to, if anyone goes back and listens to a lot of the NDE conversations I have with people, is what we see is so limited in comparison to what we are, from a spiritual place, from the stories that I've been told and the experiences people have mentioned. And then yet there are people who say they didn't see anything because what we see is different over there. It's not seeing, it's everything. It's everywhere. And it's just a different kind of experience. But she liked that part of probably her life. She could see, and she's like, well, this is my life. And so that would feel odd for her. I can understand that. But she must have made that change in her decision and it helped, right? So do you have like overall a fear of death?
I don't. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm still afraid of deep water, which makes no sense to me, but I am not afraid of dying. I feel like I'll I'll be in a better place in a different way. It's just how I feel.
So you intuitively feel like there's something beyond, like there's no fear of the loss of who Irene is. It's like I am bigger than what you
I
are.
feel, and I don't want to get too much into this because people have different beliefs, but I definitely feel, presence around me.
Hmm.
There have been times where I mean, we could talk all day long. I'm really into angels, and I find angel wings. And this was from my sister's charm bracelet. I took it off and made it into a necklace. And we'd always bought each other gifts like bookmarks with everything with angels. And shortly after she died. I remember this vividly. I was in Walmart and I was buying the big 5-pack, 6-pack of tissues, right, in bulk, because, a lot of crying going on. I just lost my sister and my kids just lost their aunt. And I'd always get the colors to match our rooms because we'd all have a box,
Right.
in the different rooms, right? And the colors I wanted was on the bottom shelf, like the wire shelf, all the way in the back. And I'm
Mm.
like, great. The other colors I didn't like were right there, easy to grab. So I had to like get down on the dirty Walmart floor, right? And kind of like germaphobe, right? And I'm like, oh, and I got to reach down and grab, I got to get that box with the pretty colors. And I looked down and there was a set of silver colored angel wings right there, like
Wow.
under the shelf. And I just find them, and I remember I was crying and thinking about her and get buying tissues
Hmm.
and I found these angel wings. It happens all the time. The weird things that I find.
So
um
that's your awareness, though. And that's the thing is that's a huge thing I try to encourage people is when they lose somebody is to try your best not to say that everything's a coincidence because I've lost people and because I recognize the message, it enhances it. Meaning, when I lost my father, something happened in my life. I don't want to get deep into it, but something happened. And instead of me just brushing it off, I thought that was a sign, but I want more. Show me more. I was okay. That was a sign, but I would like to see more. And sure enough, there was more. And then there was more. And then it got to a point where I couldn't deny it. Something very dramatic happened. And I went, okay, I'm good now. That's about as far as I want to go. But what happens, a lot of people will get a sign and they'll say, ah, it's coincidence, whatever. And they move
yeah,
on. And meanwhile, your loved ones could be over there trying to give you a message because
yeah,
they're not here anymore. So it's important to try to acknowledge those because if you want to really know they're there, acknowledge it and there's a good chance you'll see more. And so you obviously seen that and it's struck you and you went, okay, what a coincidence.
yeah.
Because this was just recently after she passed, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, right after. And but I do believe though that you have to be open to it. I think people just don't pay attention to a lot that goes on around them and
Mhm.
they don't believe in it and they don't see it because they're just not open to it.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
think
no.
that's a big part of it.
So you don't have the fear of death. You do believe something goes on. And now you've said you do this book writing, these things you're doing in your life. Like, is there a way, if somebody were interested in the stuff you do, the work you do, is there a way people can contact you, or do you not have that ability? I'm just
My
curious
website,
what you've been, you have a
yeah.
website?
So I started writing a book and I put together, yeah, it's just my name, irenegabelnick.com. And I did this years ago, and I've worked with many lead magnets building my newsletter and my email list, but um, I have a free guide. It's called 10 Easy Steps to Start Writing Your Book Today. So after I wrote my first book, which was a weight loss book, more people were interested in, oh my God, I've always wanted to write a book than they were in my book. And then I bought this website. I started the Power of Writing, and I actually I started helping people write their book. And so I have this free guide. It's really kind of a newsletter that I put together with the exact same steps that I follow every time I want to write a new book. And so, yeah, the best way would be to, if you want to write a book or share your story, would be to go to my website and grab the free guide.
That
Mhm.
reminded me of my own story where I started a music school and it was just a guitar school. It was just teaching guitar because I'm playing guitar since I was 11. And I was teaching, but then I'd be singing during all my lessons because I'm just a natural singer. I just sing all the time. And it turned into a situation where these people taking guitar lessons were like, "Can I show me how to sing?" I always wanted to sing. So I started doing that. And then it turned out that 80% of my new students were now just vocal students. So then I had to add, and voice. It was
Yeah.
guitar and voice at the end. So it's
Yeah.
funny how you can start into something like yourself, and
Yeah.
then still things come in a different way, and
Yeah.
you don't see it
It's
that
so
way.
true.
So
It's so true. And I wrote the weight loss book because I know how to lose weight quickly and easily. It's something I knew I could teach, something that but also a big part of it was that my sister was a little bit overweight. And
mm,
even carrying an extra 10% of like body fat can, I mean, it just high blood pressure, cancer. I mean, you have such a higher risk of death and dying and disease and just living, an unhappier life. And so it's really, really important to me.
right,
It's something I really cared about, but also writing a book. And my
right.
story is so powerful. And I tell people, Natalie never got a chance to write that book, but
Mm.
it's not too late for you. And what are you waiting for? So it's such a powerful story to share with people who want to write that book. And for whatever reason, they haven't done it yet,
Right. Well,
so
I mean, this is making even more sense now. It gives you that drive. And again, I didn't know that your sister dealt with
yeah,
that, right? So again, and then she's passed, and you're seeing all these books about how to write, right? And now she's probably saying, help people out by creating this book.
yeah,
And so I can see why you went down that road, and it completely makes sense. It's to me, I see it as all making sense. It's all a
yeah,
storyline in itself.
exactly. Yeah, so
So
they're
that's
all interlinked. Yeah.
yeah, that's
It's so cool because my daughter, like I said, we had limited means when I was growing up. I didn't get to take dance lessons and singing or anything. In fact, I couldn't even play an instrument because the school would lend them out to us. And my sister was learning the clarinet and somebody stole her clarinet and my parents had to pay for it. And then she wasn't allowed to get another one because
mm,
they couldn't afford to buy another one if it got stolen because, it's kind of a high crime area where I grew up. And so I never even got to learn how to play an instrument. So my kids, like my daughter took dance. I had them in drama. They've both been on TV already. Like they played,
mm,
she took singing lessons, voice lessons, sang in the Princeton choir, which is really cool. She got to travel the world with them. But yeah, I had them in everything. But I remember getting to a point because they wanted to try everything. They tried soccer, they tried this, they tried that. And I always would have to say only two at a time because you're carting them everywhere. They're only two at a time. You got to pick either, dance and soccer or singing but she
right.
plays guitar. She was first chair in French horn. And so they've had all these musical experiences that I still don't know how to read music, but it's not too late.
That's right. It never is. No, I mean, I've coached people all the way as young as 6 years old, all the way to in their late 70s, early 80s. So it just depends on when people are wanting to learn. I don't age to
Yeah.
me is just a number. We're here to experience life, and if there's ever a time people want to write a book or learn how to sing, any of
Yeah,
these things, you just do it.
exactly.
Like follow your passions. Don't what are we waiting for, right? Yeah, you got to make sure that you're enjoying, the things because that could be your skill set or your purpose. Those purposes come online at different times in your life. So, like, I never expected to be running a podcast. I didn't know I'd be good at it, and apparently people like it, and so I just keep going.
Yeah.
So these are all
So,
things, but you have to do it. You have to take the action because
right.
I'd always talk about it, and I wouldn't do it. And I just one day said, no, I'm going to start it. And you just start it. Just start something.
Do it.
Start the
Exactly.
book. Sing a little
Exactly.
bit. Start something. Go for that intro lesson or whatever it is you got to do. But that's really fascinating. This has been really amazing. I do ask a very deep question at the end of each episode. You've had your life experience, and then you had this experience when you were 9. And now I believe you're looking at it a little more clearly than you did through your life. it could have had a major influence on you. But the question I would have for you, what comes to your heart or right away? I always ask everyone to answer it right away. Like, what comes to you right away when I say, what is the reason why we incarnate and come here?
I think everyone does have some type of purpose. And, whether it seems big or small, there's something that we were meant to do.
Mm.
Whether it's even, maybe not, we always want to impact millions, right? With our book. I'd love to have millions copies sold, New York Times bestseller. But if just one person, if just one person, if I just, like my first book, I don't want to pitch it, it's not my point, but it's called Zipping It Up, How to Lose 5 Pounds Fast. Great. I'm so proud of it. It's my first book. And I helped my friend Charlotte. She dropped 2 dress sizes in 6 weeks. And she was going on a trip with her boyfriend to China. And she was so happy to be back in a size 6 again. And she sent me pictures of her shopping. And if that book, that podcast, that story, that song that you write just helps one person, even just one person, I mean, isn't it worth it? You don't have to, help 1,000 or 1,000,000, but if it just helps one person, I just think it's, get out of your own way and just do that thing.
I love that. I love the way you went into it more. And there's no problem with promoting. I have no issues with promoting a book. A lot of podcasts out there and people will comment and say, "Oh, I knew there's someone with some." Hey, that's part of the art. When I write a song and I put it out there, I want people to listen to it. That's part of what we're doing. If we didn't have books, like the amount of information people have learned and the amount of lives changed because of a book is
I
huge. So I
know.
have no issue with anybody telling about the work that they've done in their life. That's part of it. And anyone out there that wants to write a book, I encourage you to. But what you said was the same thing I've always thought, because I always wondered about being a famous musician, and I had some opportunities, and I still get different opportunities, and I've had some really interesting things happen. But the things that I always remember are the messages. I had someone reach out to me one time and tell me the impact that one of my songs made on their entire life.
Yes.
Or I did a show one time where I played at someone's wake, and the mother came up and said, "This completely made me feel so much better." Like just that influence, and that was it wasn't a, I didn't make $1 million off that gig. You know what I mean? So like, it's not even that; it's the little things. So anyone listening to it, if they hear you say something like what you said, which was beautifully said, that everyone has some purpose, a lot of people will blow that up to a point like, oh my goodness, I have this purpose now. I've got to figure out what to do. Like, it's not huge.
Right.
You just go within, find what
Yeah.
that thing is that you love, follow that, and if you impact even one person, that could be your purpose. So it's it's
That
it's
ripple effect,
oh, the
that
ripple effect is huge.
effect. And I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. And it's so cool. I love that what you shared. And I remember someone telling me that years ago I had planted a seed in something I said in one of our classes. And I said, everyone has a choice. And she said she remembered those words, and it took years for her to plan and finally escape an abusive marriage. But she finally did it. And she told me afterwards, she said, it was your words that planted that seed that helped me, finally find peace and live a life where I wake up happy every day. So
Right.
words are powerful, and you never know, what's going to come of it. And, with that said, just be kind, you know, because you don't know what someone's going through. And every single one of us is going through something, and so just be kind because, man, because the ripple effect goes both ways, right?
I, yeah, I love that. And it's like you said, you said one thing to that person and it completely changed their life. And yet someone can spend 20 years trying to perfect something that they think everyone needs.
Right.
Right. Right. We're always working. I got to become that next big
Exactly.
whatever. I got to do this. I got to
Yeah.
make all this money. And yeah, that one little quick moment you could have you could be getting bananas at a supermarket and say one thing to someone and they get in their
Yeah.
car and they go, okay, it's time. I got to do that thing. And that changes everything. And yet you don't even know. So just have good intention and it makes huge ripple effects. So I love that. So this has been amazing. I would encourage anyone, if they're interested in what you're working with, to go to your website, check out I think you said 10 easy steps to writing. I'm trying to remember what it was you said, but
Yeah.
is
10
that right?
easy, yeah, 10 easy steps to start writing your book today. I actually take you all the way through to the publishing process
Oh,
even.
really? Oh,
Yeah, I expanded it. It was started out as a checklist, then it was a newsletter, and now it's a half-written book. But
oh, wow.
coming
That's
soon.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to do another writing workshop too. I think this has kind of inspired me to do another one, and excited. Yeah, and one of my clients sent me his half-written book last night, so I'm getting kind of excited again to
Oh, so
help people.
you coach people along that way. So I can completely
Yes.
relate in regards to what I do with the music with people. So that's amazing. So
Yeah, publishing and publicity is my main thing right now. I call myself a marketing consultant, but
right,
I've been in sales and marketing. Like you said, with the jobs, all the jobs I've had throughout my life, sales and marketing, it took me a long time to realize what people really want to pay me for is to learn how
right.
to, because I've been doing it for so long. And when you start your own business, as you know, whether it's a podcast or whatever it is. So yeah, I do a lot of coaching now with publishing and publicity. So yeah.
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
amazing.
total shift. Yeah, totally left real estate. Might get my license again at some point, to do some investing or something. But yeah, big shift.
Well, thank you so much for sharing everything today, including the experience you had when you were younger. That was amazing, and all the things you're doing. I usually turn to the camera and say, please to continue to like, share, and subscribe. This is why Soul Inspired was created, is so that inspiring stories can influence other people and like Irene's story. So it's been amazing. I really do. I think, it's funny. Just to say one last thing is a lot of people will come on and say, well, I'm excited to talk about this thing I had happen, but I don't know if it's impactful or, and I'm always like, you have no idea. Like they're all impactful. Everybody's story is impactful, especially if they're encouraging people to better their lives. That's what we want to all do, right? So, but I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you, Joe. I really, really enjoyed it. It was really a wonderful, very, very thought-provoking conversation. Thank you for having me.
So is young. So